Oscar looked up at the sky. There were a few clouds, but he didn't think it was going to rain. That was good news, because he wanted to go exploring. And his mom wasn't likely to take him out on a nature walk if it started to rain. Oscar went to his room to start getting ready. First, he found his Junior Ranger Explorer vest. It was a green vest with lots of pockets and clips that he could put on and zip up over his t-shirt. Oscar loved that vest. It was perfect for carrying lots of tools and gear. And it was perfect for collecting things out in nature. He put his arms through the armholes of the green vest and then zipped it up. Next, he found the compass that he'd gotten as a present on his last birthday. A compass is a wonderful explorer tool. It is a little thing that looks like a watch or a clock, but instead of telling you the time, it tells you which way you're going. Oscar attached the compass to a clip on the front of his vest. Then he took down his binoculars from where they were hanging on a peg in his closet. Binoculars are something you look through that lets you see things that are far away by making them look bigger. Kind of like magnifying glasses, but for far away stuff. His binoculars were on a long string that could go around his neck, and Oscar put the string over his head now. The binoculars hung down against his chest, all ready to use. Those were the most important things he would need for his exploration. Oscar could hardly wait to get out into nature and see what he could see. Rocks, bugs, animals, plants. He loved to observe it all and collect what he could. But before he got started, he wanted to gather a little more gear to take with him. He got a big magnifying glass and stuck that in one of the pockets of his vest. He also put in a few small boxes made out of clear plastic that had magnifying tops. These boxes were really cool. You could put in a specimen, like maybe a rock or a small feather. Then you could save it in the box, and you could see it really well, because the magnifying top made it look bigger. Oscar also put a piece of rope and some string in his vest pockets. just in case. He added a small book that showed pictures of different kinds of bugs and animals that lived in his area. And then he was ready to go. With his binoculars swinging slightly against his chest, Oscar walked into the living room to look for his mother. When she saw him in his vest, with all his gear, Oscar's mother smiled a big smile. She knew exactly where he wanted to go. Luckily for Oscar, his mom liked going on nature explorations with him almost as much as he liked going. So, in practically no time at all, his mother was packing a small backpack with water bottles and snacks for them. She made Oscar put on an explorer's hat, which he had forgotten, and then they were on their way. They went to the small woods that weren't too far away from their home. The woods had a trail through the trees that came to an open hillside after a while, where you could usually see big birds flying in the sky. If you kept going, you even got to a pond where tadpoles swam and little frogs hid in the reeds around the edge. It was a great place for an explorer. Oscar and his mother set off into the shady woods. Their footsteps were quiet on the dirt path. They walked quickly into the woods until they couldn't see the street at all. There were just woods and green leaves around them, everywhere they looked. The air was cool, and it smelled like pine trees. It felt clean and nice to breathe. So Oscar took a deep breath. As his eyes got used to the shadows, Oscar noticed more and more details of the woods around him. He saw a squirrel on a branch, standing as still as a statue and staring at him out of its little dark eyes. He saw a hole in the ground where some little animal had probably made its home. And then he spotted his biggest discovery yet. He saw a bird's nest up in the high branches of a nearby tree. Quietly, he pointed it out to his mother, who hadn't noticed it. She told him that if they came back another day, maybe there would be baby birds in the nest. Oscar decided that they would do that for sure. Then they continued on through the little woods. Soon they came out into the sunshine where the trees stopped and a hill rose up in front of them. Oscar ran ahead up the hill, blinking at the light from the sun. His gear clanked in his vest as he ran. It was a satisfying, explorer kind of a sound. When he was almost to the top of the hill, he paused and looked around. He gazed up at the blue sky and watched for a moment. Soon, he spotted what he was looking for. It was a big bird swooping silently through the sky. He was almost sure it was a hawk. He picked up his binoculars and looked through them. It took a few minutes of moving the binoculars back and forth, but after a while, he found the bird. The binoculars made the hawk look much closer. He could see the feathers in its wide, strong wings. He could see its tail, and even its claws, pulled up close to its body as it flew. Oscar's mother caught up to him then, and he let her take a turn looking at the hawk with his binoculars. After they had both admired it, they decided to keep walking. Oscar wanted to be sure he had plenty of time to explore at the pond before they had to go home. But just as they started off again, a glint caught his eye. Oscar looked down and saw a small rock on the ground. On one side, part of the rock was white and shiny. This was what had caught the sunlight and reflected it, making the glint that Oscar had seen. He knew this shiny, white kind of rock was called quartz, and it was rare. Oscar leaned down and picked up the rock. He put it into one of the collecting boxes in his vest. Then he started off again next to his mother. They walked on down the other side of the hill. Up ahead, Oscar could see a clump of green. These were the grasses and tall reeds that grew around the pond. As they got closer, he could hear the sounds of frogs hiding in the reeds. He walked around to the other side of the pond, where he knew there was an opening in the reeds. That way, he could go right up to the edge of the water. He knelt down by the pond there and peered into the water. Sure enough, he saw little tadpoles swimming around. Tadpoles look like tiny fish, but Oscar knew the truth. They're not really fish. They're actually baby frogs. As they get older, they grow legs and lose their tails. And just like that, they become little hopping frogs. He was watching the tadpoles closely when his mother gave him a very good surprise. She brought out a glass jar from her backpack, and she asked him how he would like to bring some of the tadpoles home and watch them grow into frogs. Once they became frogs, he could bring them back here and let them go in the reeds around the pond. Oscar was overjoyed. He was so happy at the idea that he jumped up to give his mother a huge hug. She knelt down and pulled him in close. He felt her warm arms all around him, and he rested his head against her soft shoulder. They stayed like that for a moment, in their cozy and happy hug. Then Oscar stepped back and took the jar that his mother held out to him. She explained that he could just scoop it in the pond until he had a few tadpoles in it, along with some pond water for them to live in. Back home, they would set up a small aquarium that was a bowl or tank with water in it, where pond or sea creatures like tadpoles or fish could live. They would put things that tadpoles like to eat into their aquarium, and every day he could check to see if they had grown or changed. He could even draw pictures in a little notebook to show how they looked each day. Over time, they would get bigger and begin to grow legs. Their tails would get shorter and then finally disappear. It would be a science observation, she explained. Oscar opened the jar and set the top down carefully next to him. Then he leaned over and scooped the jar through the water. He held it up to look inside. It was filled with cloudy pond water. He watched closely as the water settled a little bit, and sure enough, there were 3 tadpoles swimming inside. Perfect! He had gotten 3 little tadpoles on his first try. Oscar carefully screwed the top back onto the jar. Now they had to get the tadpoles back to their home. The little guys would be fine in the jar for a while, But soon they would need more air, which they couldn't get in the closed jar. So Oscar stood up, ready to go back the way they'd come. Before they started, though, he pulled out his magnifying glass and looked at the tadpoles more closely. One was bigger than the other two. This one he decided to name Biggie. The other two he named Smally and Froggy, which he thought was a pretty funny name because the tadpole didn't look like a frog yet at all. Then, holding the jar very carefully, Oscar started back towards home with his mother. Together, Oscar the explorer, his mother, Biggie, Smally, and Froggy all went up and over the small hill, down and through the shady woods, and back towards home. There, the tadpoles would grow and change and become young frogs. And Oscar would grow and change too. But no matter what, he would always remain an explorer.